They laughed at her as a black woman mechanic. She proved them wrong. Here's the shocking truth. In the heart of a busy Detroit garage, laughter rang out like a twisted symphony. The clinking of tools fell silent as she stepped in, her confidence casting a shadow over the mocking glares of her coworkers. This was no ordinary mechanic. Mara was about to change everything. With grease-stained hands and fierce determination, she stood before them, ready to turn their laughter into disbelief. Little did they know, beneath the surface, an extraordinary truth was waiting to be revealed, a truth that would unravel everything they thought they knew. As she reached for the wrench, an inexplicable energy buzzed in the air. Just then, a heavy cloud rolled outside, dimming the sun. Was it mere coincidence? Or some mysterious omen? People in the shop leaned in, whispering among themselves. Some claimed they saw her adjusting a car engine while wearing a golden bracelet that seemed to gleam with its own light, almost like it was alive. What was the story behind it? Her past? The truth was buried in layers of shocking revelations and untold secrets. Tension escalated as Mara prepared to diagnose a problem with an ill-tempered vehicle, one that had sent other mechanics scrambling and cursing. As she slid under the car, the room held its breath. What would happen? The sound of silence swelled, thick like fog, as everyone stared wide-eyed, waiting for either triumph or failure. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue with a delicate touch. Mara loosened the bolts. The tension was palpable. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from the electrifying anticipation that filled the air. Could she really conquer what others deemed impossible? In that moment, a loud crack jolted the crowd, and all eyes turned to see the rearview mirror fall off the wall, an eerie reassurance that chaos was always near. But it wasn't just about fixing cars. It was about unraveling a hidden world where mechanics were not just hands in grease, but women fighting against centuries of exclusion. The engine roared back to life, and with it, so did a newfound respect. But would they fully accept her? Would the wheels of change finally turn in her favor? As the garage buzzed with murmurs and questions, Mara stood tall, ready to prove them all wrong. What exhilarating secrets lay ahead? A hushed awe enveloped the garage after the engine roared back to life. The harsh sounds of gasps and startled breaths punctured the silence as Mara crawled out from under the car, smudged with grease, but radiating an unshakable confidence. The clattering of her coworkers' tools resumed, but the clinks were softer now, laced with uncertainty. Rick, the shop's self-proclaimed expert with oily hands and a bigger ego, rubbed his chin. It's just luck, he scoffed, trying to maintain his grip on the narrative. But even he couldn't hide the shadow of doubt gnawing at his bravado. Mara caught his eye and squared her shoulders. Luck doesn't fix engines. Skill does. The words hung in the air. The crowd drew closer. Tension crackling. Was it admiration or contempt? But as she turned away, a voice pierced through the tentative respect. You think one job is going to change our minds? You're just another wannabe, sneered Carla, the only other female mechanic in the shop. Mara felt a twinge in her chest. The hurt mingled with determination. This was more than just engines. It was about breaking barriers. Her golden bracelet caught the light again, enticing and mysterious, pulling attention. What was the deal with that bracelet? She didn't have time to ponder. More than a response, she needed to show them, to silence the shadows of doubt, and it was time for the real test. Down the lane of the garage, an ominous rumble erupted. A massive, rusted truck that had been bogged down for months rolled in. A colossal beast that had broken many spirits and tools alike. It growled as it entered, its engine sputtering and threatening to give out altogether. The murmurs grew louder. She won't touch that. She yes and over her head. Let her try. This will be fun. Mara steadied her breath. She could feel the weight of their eyes, the challenge bursting into chaos like the storm brewing outside. With a steady hand, she approached the beast. This was her moment to dig deeper. She peered under the hood, the stench of gasoline wafting up, mingling with the sweat of disbelief. But when she saw the engine, something clicked. An intense energy infused her. The connection was alive. As she began to patch it up, a wild storm began, rain pelting against the garage roof, resonating like a heartbeat. It was her own heart that raced. Every bolt she tightened a declaration of war against prejudice, and then a spark. A twist of metal, an unexpected turn, the beast shuddered, and then silence. Mara's hands froze for a moment. Everyone held their breaths in unison. I told you. Rick erupted. She's done for. Hope hung by a thread until Mara's determination thrummed strongly. She squeezed the flares of her bracelet, and a pulse surged through her. What if this bracelet was more than a trinket? What if it held some latent force she didn't fully understand? In one last desperate maneuver, she twisted the ignition. Fire and lightning erupted from the hood. The roar of the engine unleashed like thunder. The truck jolted to life, almost alive, a victorious roar against the tempest outside. The crowd erupted. Shock and disbelief twinkled in their eyes. Cheers echoed as she stood triumphantly beside the truck, the overwhelming wave of acceptance washing over her. But at that moment, a figure lingered in the shadows watching. Someone had come to witness her triumph. Who were they, and what did they want? As the cheers faded into murmurs, Mara felt a chill run down her spine. What was their interest? What secret was the garage about to uncover? The vibrations from the rumbling truck buzzed in Mara's bones, and the cheers of her coworkers washed over her like waves. But that shadowy figure stuck in the corner of her vision chilled her to the core. It was as if time slowed. The world blurred out, leaving just the figure tall, with a hat pulled low, obscuring facial features. What's their deal? She thought, adrenaline surging through her. Swallowing her uncertainty, she wiped grease from her hands and took a cautious step toward the figure. The crowd buzzed around her, caught up in excitement or disbelief. But one thing was clear: this stranger wasn't part of it. What are you looking at? She called out, her voice firm, cutting through the noise like a blade. The figure didn't flinch. Instead, they took a deliberate step forward, revealing a glint of something metallic in their hand. Just a flicker. Mara, you all right? Carla's voice chimed in, but Mara's eyes were locked on the stranger. Yeah, just a second. She kept her voice steady, breathing in deep to quell the storm in her chest. The crowd behind her faded, and a palpable tension hung in the air. She realized she was all alone now. The cheers, the doubt, the warmth they had given her moments before had vanished, replaced by an unsettling fear. The stranger moved into the light, casting an eerie glow across their face. You're the one who brought that beast back to life, they said, their voice low and gravelly. The kind that sent goosebumps racing across her skin. Who are you? Mara demanded, her heart thrumming faster. Was this someone about to challenge her again? What other barrier remained between her and acceptance? A friend, or perhaps a foe, depending on how you look at it. The voice dripped with a hint of menace, but with an underlying curiosity. Mara steeled herself. What do you want? She clenched her fists, suddenly aware of the 100 eyes on her, slicing through the air with judgment. I saw what you did, but you don't know what you've done, they replied, a smirk curling their lips. There are forces at play here you can't even begin to understand. People watching, waiting. Her brow furrowed, and an image flickered through her mind: the bracelet. It had felt powerful, but could it truly have any hidden significance? You think this is about proving yourself? They scoffed, gesturing toward her with that metallic glint still firm in their grip. This is bigger than you think, or I could crush you without breaking a sweat. A wave of unease surged through her, and she straightened, narrowing her eyes. Try me. Shrugging off her instinct to flee, she felt a flicker of defiance ignite deep within. All those years spent proving herself, facing contempt, and now this? She could feel the storm brewing again, but this time, she could harness it. Just remember, the figure continued, their tone shifting as the shadows revealed more of their face. Every spark has a source, and you may not like what you discover. And just as quickly as they appeared, the stranger stepped back, retreating into the shadows of the garage. The roar of the newly awoken truck started to fade into the background noise as Mara grappled with confusion and curiosity. What on earth did they mean? What was this source they spoke of? There was something deeper, something unfathomable swirling in the chaos around her. As conversations erupted again among her coworkers, Mara spun on her heels. She needed answers. She needed to uncover the truth behind her success and the figure's ominous warning. But as she moved, a bead of golden light flickered, falling from her bracelet and shattering on the ground. A sign? A warning? Mara knelt quickly to pick it up, a knot tightening in her stomach. What had she just unleashed? With uncertainty dripping from her thoughts and the storm of chaos looming closer, she realized she was just on the brink of a discovery, a revelation, to shake her very foundation. What lay ahead wouldn't just test her skills, but her very identity. The quest for truth had begun, and she could already feel the shadows circling. What were those forces, and how would they respond to her now? Mara's heart raced as she clutched the broken piece of her bracelet, the golden light dimming as it crumbled in her palm, leaving jagged edges that pricked at her skin. The crowd around her was heating up, laughter and excitement mixing with her rising panic. They had no idea. They hadn't seen the figure, the ominous whispers in the shadows that had just thrust her into a world she didn't understand. Did you break it? Carla's voice was sharp with concern, jolting Mara back to reality. What is that? Before Mara could find her words, an icy chill crawled up her spine. She lifted her gaze toward the shadows. Nothing. Just dropped something, she mumbled, her voice trembling. It didn't matter. The laughter faded, but the weight of uncertainty pressed heavily against her chest. What spark had she awakened? She felt like she was standing on a precipice. The energy in the garage buzzed, a blend of mechanical sounds and human voices, but all she could hear was the quiet echo of the figure's words. They had seen her. They knew her. But who were they? Take it easy, Mara, Carla said, her brow creasing with worry. You're scaring me. Right, Mara snapped, shaking away the unease. No, I'm fine. Just focused. I need to check things out. She pushed past her friend, eyes scanning the edges of the garage for remnants of the figure. Each step felt weighted. She had faced so many doubts and demonized looks, but this was different. Her instincts screamed at her, pulling her toward action, toward danger. Moving toward the shadows, she felt the prickle of eyes on her, but she shoved it aside. Her coworkers remained glued to the lingering excitement of the truck. More cheers erupted as someone blasted the horn, drowning out her fears, but it didn't touch the dark seed of anxiety growing inside. Mara, Carla called after her, but it was like trying to reach through water. The air thickened, her pulse quickening as she reached the spot where the figure had vanished. Where are you? She whispered, startled by the echo of her own voice. She half expected a response, a taunt or a riddle, but nothing came. Just the sound of machinery humming to life, the smell of oil and sweat lingering like a heavy blanket. Her fingers grazed the wall, seeking something, anything that hinted at the truth. Was there a mark? A sign? She felt a flash of anger at how quickly they had disappeared. Mara wasn't just a mechanic. She had resurrected something. She had earned her place here. Suddenly, she felt it, a pulse beneath her fingertips. She pressed harder, and a small compartment clicked open. Inside lay a trinket, an amulet entwined with wires that sparkled with a subtle glow. It was beautiful and terrifying. The moment she picked it up, a searing jolt shot through her arm, and images flashed in her mind, visions of furious storms, haunting faces, and shadowy figures watching from the sidelines. Desperation clawed at her heart. Who are you? She breathed, but the words fell into the void. A voice cut through the suffocating silence, deep and chilling. You shouldn't have gone looking, Mara. She whipped around to find the figure standing almost behind her, their face obscured once more. The glint of metal was gone, but a new terror filled the space. What do you want from me? She gasped, brandishing the amulet like a shield. You've poked the bear now, darling, the figure said, stepping closer. And this bear? It won't rest until it gets a taste of what's been awakened. Mara's breath caught in her throat. She had wanted answers, but hadn't prepared for any of this. The amulet felt heavy, the energy crackling around her like a live wire. What had she stumbled into? The room seemed to swirl around them as the shadows pressed in, the overhead lights flickering ominously. And just as uncertainty gripped her in a cold embrace, the figure leaned in, their voice low and dangerous. You have a choice, Mara. Fight or flee. But know this, the shadows don't rest. They gather strength, and you are the one they're after. Mara felt the ground shift beneath her, a cosmic weight of destiny, shifting into place. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore, but for everything she had built and believed in. Choose wisely, the figure whispered before melting back into the darkness. Her heart thudded like a drumbeat. What did that mean for her? She had no idea what lay ahead, but she knew now that battling so-called forces was inevitable. And as fear wrapped its tendrils around her, she felt the unease transform into resolve. What awaited her on this strange path? The clock was ticking, and the race had just begun. Mara's heart hammered in her chest, each pulse a reminder of the choice looming in front of her. The shadows writhed like the fears in her mind, taunting her with uncertain outcomes. She clenched the amulet tightly, its warmth contrasting with the cold dread seeping into her bones. Fight or flee, the words echoed, igniting something deep inside her. She knew flight was a comfortable choice. Laughter had always been easier to face than the truth, but she was tired of being scared. She had spent too long proving herself in a world that didn't expect much from a black woman mechanic. Now, it felt like all her battles had brought her to this moment, standing against an unseen monster in the dark. She turned stiffly, trying to shake off the feeling of vulnerability that prickled at her skin. The garage felt suffocating, the joyous chatter of her coworkers a murmur far away. Mara? Carla's anxious voice reached her, but her friend was lost in the fog of her fears, fading into the background. Mara took a deep breath, centering herself on the task at hand. The glow of the amulet pulsed in her palm, urging her forward. She needed answers. An escape could wait. What would she learn if she simply turned her back now? She had the chance to uncover secrets, the true power of what she had stumbled upon. Cautiously, she stepped deeper into the shadows, guided by instinct. The air tightened around her, thick with tension. Fragments of anger at the figure's mockery simmered beneath her skin. She was not a victim. She was strong. The faintest whisper brushed past her ear. Choose wisely. Mara's eyes darted around, searching for the source. Show yourself, she shouted, her voice breaking the silence like a crack of thunder. The emptiness swallowed her words, but the shadows flickered in response. She felt the pulse of energy from the amulet resonate, and the air shifted. The ground beneath her began to tremble, as if responding to her defiance. Suddenly, a figure emerged, half-formed from the darkness. An outline cloaked in an ethereal haze, eyes gleaming with dark intent. Thought you could go looking without consequences? The voice dripped with sarcasm, but held an undercurrent of malice. Mara squared her shoulders. I'm not afraid of you. You should be. You've awakened them. The figure pointed a long finger back into the darker recesses of the garage, where even the light seemed afraid to tread. Images flashed again, thick and disorienting chaos, sabotage, faces twisted in rage. A storm of movement threatened to consume her. What do you mean? She demanded, but her voice wavered in the intensity of the moment. The shadows are watching you, Mara. The figure's face shifted, revealing fleeting glimpses of those who had claimed power through fear. They'll stop at nothing to reclaim what was taken from them. Mara swallowed hard. The pieces fell into place, their significance colliding like a freight train. This was about more than just her. It was about her place in the world, the walls she had cracked through sheer will. What have I done? She feared to ask. The figure laughed, a chilling sound that slithered through her. You've brought attention to a game that was already lost. The question is, will you stand and fight, or will you vanish into the shadows like the countless others? A bead of sweat trailed down her back. The weight of those lost pressed heavily on her heart, but within the dread, a flicker of determination ignited. She wasn't alone. She was surrounded by a legacy of resilience. Mara raised her chin, the amulet pulsing with newfound clarity, fueling her resolve. I'll never back down again. Suddenly, the figure's expression shifted in affronted surprise, the fleeting moment of vulnerability in their dark smirk. Then prepare for the reckoning, Mara. The shadows are only the beginning. With those final words, they retreated, leaving Mara enveloped in a pulsing silence filled with uncertainty. The garage felt larger now, almost frightening. She stood there, caught between two worlds, what she knew and what was awaiting her. The fight was just starting, and she felt the thrill of it. But what was truly hidden beneath the layers of darkness that had been awakened? Mara nodded to herself, heart pounding with the thrill of expectation. This was the dawn of something endless and terrifying. In the corner of her vision, shadows pooled and swirled, beckoning her to step further into the unknown. Mara's breath hitched as the shadows danced menacingly around her. Their movement felt alive, curling and unfurling like serpents, enticing her to step closer. The garage, once a sanctuary filled with the hum of engines, now felt like a trap, the walls closing in. She took a cautious step forward, her heart pounding. Each heartbeat thrummed in her ears, urging her to stand her ground. The amulet's glow brightened, illuminating fragments of the chaos lurking within the depths of the garage. Had she truly awakened something? The thought sent chills through her. Enough with the games. She shouted again, feeling the raw anger sparking inside. I want answers. Silence hung heavy for a moment before the shadows rippled again, swirling like smoke to form the figure that had confronted her. There was a sinister energy pulsating from it, and Mara felt a mix of apprehension and determination. Answers? The figure replied, voice silky, dripping with mockery. What can I say that will matter? You already know too much. Know too much. She echoed, nearly laughing at how absurd it sounded. You think I'm afraid of my own power? In that fraction of a second, clarity struck her. This wasn't just about the amulet or the shadows. No, it was a reflection of everything she had faced in life, the doubts thrust upon her, the towering obstacles she had defied. Power? The figure sneered, stepping closer, the shadows wrapping tighter around its form. This isn't power, darling, it's a curse. You're stepping into a war that's not yours to fight. Mara held her ground, fists clenched. And yet here I am. If I have the strength to wield this amulet, then I have the strength to face whatever comes next. The shadows quivered in response. The figure's dark eyes narrowed, assessing her as if weighing her worth, scanning for cracks in her resolve. Mara felt exposed but unyielding. She realized she had more to lose than the specter could ever understand. Foolish girl, it hissed, its voice low and foreboding. What you seek will not bring the glory you hope for. There are things beneath this garage, things born of fire and rage. They will not be tamed by light. A pulse of fear crept into Mara's chest. What lurked beneath? Rooted in the earth she walked on was a murky past, her past, filled with echoes of those who had been forgotten, generations trampled by apathy. The amulet warmed in her palm, as though it understood, shared in her burden. I'll decide what I face, she said, her voice steady, no longer echoing doubt. I've dealt with monsters before, bigots, skeptics. You think shadows terrify me? They're just reflections of our fears, and I've learned how to fight them. For a heartbeat, the figure faltered. Mara could almost sense it recalibrating its approach. The intensity of the moment bore down upon her like a weight. The shadows flickered, hesitating, and in that instant, a sharp noise crackled through the air like glass breaking. What was that? She gasped, her heart racing. The figure glared at her, momentarily distracted by the sound. You've unleashed what should have remained buried. It roared, its voice trembling with fear and dread. The temperature in the garage dropped suddenly, the air thickening with an eerie chill. Mara's instincts screamed to flee, but she held tight to the amulet. What had she awakened? She wasn't ready to find out, but deep inside, a growing sense of responsibility churned. She had to resist the urge to retreat. Suddenly, a low growl resonated from the shadows, pooling beneath her. Mara's breath caught in her throat. Something skittered at the edge of the darkened garage, a hulking mass just out of sight. Prepare yourself, Mara, the figure warned, its voice a soft caress now. The shadows have been waiting for someone like you. Then, with one swift motion, the figure melted back into the shadows, leaving Mara standing alone, adrenaline surging through her veins, the ominous noise growing louder. What loomed in the dark? She took a tentative step toward the sound, drawn by a mix of curiosity and dread. Mara clenched her fists tighter, ready for whatever would emerge. Show yourself, she whispered, a mix of determination and fear lining her voice. But the shadows only deepened, the anticipation curling like smoke, hinting at the revelations that lay just beyond her reach. What awaited her in the dark? And could she bear the weight of the truth? The answer danced tantalizingly close, just beyond the jagged edge of darkness. A deep growl echoed, vibrating through the air around her like a live wire. It clawed at the edges of Mara's consciousness, wrapping around her spine, causing her to shiver. The shadows shifted, morphing into a formless darkness that stood just beyond the limits of her sight. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but she remained planted in place, breathing heavily, her hands gripping the amulet like a lifebuoy in a storm. "Show yourself," she demanded again, but her voice was shaky, betraying the fear that roiled in her gut. The growling intensified, thick and low, a cocktail of threat and hunger. Mara's heart raced, a drummer in a frenzy as dread flooded her veins. Memories of her journey flashed, moments of doubt, laughter behind her back, the harsh words from those who doubted her. In the face of the lurking unknown, those memories clung tightly, urging her forward. Suddenly, the shadows erupted, swirling violently, and out stepped a creature unlike any she could have imagined. It was tall, its body cloaked in shadow, sinewy limbs twisted into grotesque forms. Eyes blazed like two molten coals, glimmering with malice. "Fear not, it's only a child," the figure had said before vanishing into the deep, but this was no child. This was a nightmare born from darkness, its presence suffocating and raw. Mara was frozen, but a distant part of her mind clawed at the cold fog of her fear. She remembered the amulet. With a deliberate movement, she raised it high, letting the warmth of its glow pour into the space around her. The creature recoiled, hissing as if the light burned. "You think that trinket can save you?" It spat, the voice like gravel scraping across metal, filled with disdain. "Maybe not," Mara replied, her confidence hardening, "but I'm not here to play your games. I want to be another shadow in your collection." Fueled by her anger, she stepped toward it, the amulet glowing brighter, pushing back the darkness. It refracted sharply, forming patterns in the air, a shield against the creature's advance. There was a brief pause as the hiss faded into a low snarl. The eyes narrowed, calculating, and the atmosphere shifted, igniting with electric tension. It lunged forward with startling speed, its claws reaching out, a blur of darkness that threatened to engulf her. Mara dove aside just in time, the creature soaring past her and crashing into the wall. A shower of debris rained down, the dingy garage erupting around her. She didn't wait for it to recover. Breathing hard, she dashed for the back of the garage, heart pounding like thunder in her ears. Table saws, wrenches, and old tires cluttered the floor, but she used the chaos to her advantage, darting through the mess as the creature emerged, shaking off the fragments of concrete and darkness. "You can't escape," it roared, voice tinged with fury. Each word felt like ice being plunged into warm water, creating a steely resolve within her. Mara's mind raced, piecing together fragments of everything she had learned so far. The amulet was not just a source of light. It was a conduit of her will, her strength. Everything she had faced had led her here. She wouldn't cower. "Enough." She spun around, staring the creature down. "You're right. I want to escape. I'll stand and fight." The amulet pulsed in her hand, and she conjured the energy within, directing it at the creature. The light flared, amplifying until it felt tremendous. But just before the wave of brightness surged forth, a sinister grin stretched across the creature's face, revealing jagged teeth that mirrored Mara's worst fears. "You do not yet understand, child. This fight is only the beginning." A deafening roar pierced the air as the power of the amulet clashed with the creature's darkness, an explosion of energy that sent Mara flying back against the garage wall. The world spun around her. Just as consciousness slipped away, she heard a whispered taunt curling in the air like smoke. "Your true battle awaits." Mara's last thought, as she crumpled to the ground, echoed in the silence that followed, a specter of impending dread. What lay ahead could be far worse than the creature she had faced. As darkness enveloped her, a single question remained. Was she truly prepared for what was to come? Mara awoke to an eerie silence. The oppressive darkness wrapped around her like a thick blanket. The last remnants of the creature's growl echoed, distant but still reverberating in her chest. She blinked, trying to shake off the cobwebs of unconsciousness, her mind racing to connect the dots of her recent confrontation. Where was she? Pushing herself up from the cold, hard floor, she noticed the garage was gone. The familiar smell of oil and metal had faded, replaced by a musty, damp scent. Light streamed through cracks in the walls, outlining fragments of a new environment. She was in an underground chamber. Stone walls surrounded her, and the air felt stale and cloying. Mara rubbed her head, feeling the weight of the amulet around her neck. It pulsed faintly, as if encouraging her to rise. She stood, taking a moment to steady herself, her body still trembling from the encounter. A low rumble echoed through the chamber, shaking loose dust from the ceiling. Panic clawed at her throat. A deep, resonant voice filled the air, dripping with condescension. "Welcome back, Mara." She froze, instincts screaming to flee, but a flicker of defiance ignited in her heart. "Show yourself," she shouted, channeling all the strength the amulet provided. A figure materialized before her, cloaked in a swirling dark mist. This one was different, more humanoid, but equally grotesque. Its face twisted in a smirk, a visage that was both mocking and repulsive. "You think you could escape so easily?" it taunted. "The games have just begun." Mara took a deep breath, pushing down her fear. "I'm not playing games. I'm ending this." The creature laughed, a harsh, spine-chilling sound that echoed around the chamber. "Ah, such spirit. But you don't yet understand what lies beyond this place. You've barely scratched the surface of the darkness." With a wave of its hand, the chamber began to shift. Walls pulsed, and shadows danced like flames, revealing glimpses of other twisted creatures lurking just outside her sight. Memories of her struggles flooded her mind, her fight for respect as a mechanic, the sneers of doubt from others. They thought she was weak, just another black woman trying to fit into a man's world. But they were wrong. She had fought harder than anyone knew. She had the strength within. "Let me show you what awaits," the creature hissed, and with another flick, the ground beneath her trembled violently, splitting apart. Shadows lashed out, whispering her fears, showing her glimpses of failure. Mara gritted her teeth, remembering the hands of those who had supported her, the friends who believed in her even when she didn't believe in herself. "I'm not afraid of you." She tightened her grip on the amulet. "I stand for myself, and I stand for those who feel unseen." With a surge of energy, she unleashed the power of the amulet toward the shifting ground. The light exploded in front of her, filling the chamber with radiance, dispelling some of the darkness. The creature lurched back, momentarily surprised, but quickly regained its composure, fangs bared in fury. "Foolish child, you may shield yourself today, but your strength will wane. I will break you." The chamber shuddered again, shaking Mara to her core. She could feel the chilling presence of other creatures mixing into the shadows, their dark echo amplifying her doubts. "No, I will not fall into your trap." Mara's heart raced as she felt an energy expand within her, fueled by defiance and hope. She had come too far to let it end here. She thought of the laughter that once echoed in mockery, now turning into a rallying cry of courage. The shadows swirled faster, a tempest of chaos, and for a heartbeat, Mara was lost in their darkness. But then, she pinpointed her focus. She was not afraid. She would conquer. Yet just as she unleashed the full force of the amulet into the storm, the ground gave way beneath her feet, and she plummeted into a realm of chilling darkness, screams of the unseen clawing at her. The last sight she had was the creature's vicious grin before everything slipped away, the echoing laughter. Fated as she fell, what other horrors lay in wait? What true battle awaited her in this abyss? Mara's descent felt eternal, as if the darkness was swallowing her whole. The air turned ice-cold, wrapping around her like a vice. Just when she thought she'd lost all sense of direction, she landed with a sickening thud on a wet, slippery ground. Pain shot through her limbs, and she gasped, momentarily stunned. Shaking off the grogginess, she pushed herself onto her elbows. The darkness clung to her like a shadow, but she could make out flickers of movement in the corners of her vision. Panic crept into her veins again. She couldn't afford fear. Not now. "Welcome to the pit," a voice hissed from the void. It was mocking, smooth like oil yet sharp, cutting through the air. "Who are you?" Mara demanded, forcing herself to remain steadfast as shadows coalesced into writhing forms around her. The figures were grotesque, their twisted bodies blurring into a storm of darkness. "We are your nightmares given life," a creature growled. It slithered closer, its eye sockets void of anything human. We feed on weakness, and how you reek of doubt. But she stood taller, fists clenched. I'm not weak. I know my worth. The laughter erupted from the shadows, a cacophony of sinister sounds. Tell that to the girl who lies beneath it all. You've always been told you don't belong. Haven to you. That struck a chord. Mara felt the sting of old memories, the dismissive snickers of co-workers, the endless comparisons to more experienced mechanics. They didn't define me, she muttered, fingers brushing the amulet. Its warmth sparked her resolve. We will show you the truth. The creatures churned, morphing into images that played before her. Scenes of her life. The long hours faced under the hood of cars, the sleek machines she loved, the late-night study sessions. She watched herself as a child, drawing sketches of engines. Bullied in school. Fast forward to apprenticeships filled with names written in sneers: girl, black, not good enough. The visions sped up, show after show of painful rejection and self-doubt. Her heart raced, and a lump formed in her throat. These shadows knew her well. Enough, she shouted into the encroaching darkness. You can't take this from me. My worth is not defined by what others see. And just like that, the amulet pulsed with renewed energy, casting a brilliant light that pushed back against the throng of shadows. The light swirled, illuminating grotesque faces caught mid-laugh, their expressions twisting in fear. But they were resilient. Another burst of dark energy whipped toward her, knocking the breath from her lungs. For a moment, Mara faltered, the weight of their laughter crashing over her, threatening to pull her down. You're not enough, Mara. You will never escape the pit. Shut up, she screamed, each word fueled by determination. She focused on the warmth of the amulet, feeling an electric connection surge through her body, igniting strength she didn't know she had. Suddenly, the ground shifted beneath her again. It was as if the shadows were fighting back against her light. We will trap you forever, they howled, the walls of the pit closing in. Mara had to make a choice. Trust the amulet and herself, or let the shadows pull her into despair. She chose to stand her ground. With a shout, she pressed her hands forward, unleashing everything she had. The light exploded outward, surging through the darkness like a tidal wave. The creature's laughter morphed into screams of agony as shadows recoiled. But just before she could feel the sweet taste of victory, a deep rumble shook the very essence of the pit. Cracks opened in the ground, and through them seeped an even darker force, thick, oozing despair that threatened to engulf her whole. What was this place? What more could they throw her way? Would her strength truly be enough to fight against this deeper darkness? As the ground trembled, Mara took a deep breath, locking her focus on the horizon of light. She had come too far. She was done being invisible. But there was still another battle looming ahead, one that might take everything she had left. Could she conquer her final fear, or would this darkness swallow her whole? Mara stood firm as the ground trembled beneath her, the darkness clawing at her resolve. The shadows surged, lashing out with whispers of self-doubt and regret. You'll never escape, they hissed in unison, their voices a chorus of derision. This is your end. But she refused to yield. The weight of the amulet warmed against her chest, offering a beacon of hope amid the suffocating gloom. She took a deep breath, drawing on the strength of all the battles she had fought, and won every raucous laugh, every skeptical glance, and each moment of triumph she had finally earned. You don't define me, she screamed, channeling her anger and fear into a radiant surge. The amulet flared alive, illuminating the chamber with a blinding light. Shadows recoiled, shrieking, "No, you can't." With each pulse of energy, she felt the darkness retreating. It was a battle cry, a declaration of her agency, her refusal to be reduced to what they said. She was an unworthy mechanic, an invisible woman in a man's world. The cracks in the ground widened, unleashing streams of darkness, the core of despair. Mara charged forward, fists clenched tight around the glowing amulet. "I won't let you take my light," she declared, her voice resolute, echoing through the stone walls. The shadows shrieked, unsure now, caught between their fear and their want for her submission. The room pulsed, shifting with the weight of their indecision. The pit shook violently, sending waves of darkness crashing against her. Mara faltered for a moment as a sudden wave of despair washed over her, memories of doubt flooding her mind. She saw herself as a child, sitting silently in corners, afraid to raise her hand. She felt like an outsider, forever battling an uphill climb. "No," she cried out, shaking her head to clear the images. "Those days are over." With clarity surging through her veins, she raised the amulet higher. "You are weak. I embrace my truth." A radiant beam shot forth, breaking through the encroaching shadows, scattering them like smoke. Mara felt exhilarated, a surge of adrenaline as light poured from her, unfurling against the gathering darkness. The figures around her shrieked, their forms contorting in agony. "You cannot extinguish us. We are the fears that drive you. Then let me own them. Let them fuel me," she shouted, her voice slicing through the tumult. And just like that, the shadows tumbled, merging into a swirling vortex of darkness. It pulled at her, seeking to re-establish its hold, but she stood firm. Every doubt they represented now fed her strength. Memories of her journey, her victories, her trials, each one a solid stone in the foundation of her determination. "I am more than your whispers. I am a force of light." With one last burst of energy, she focused on expressing everything she had learned, not only about her power, but of who she was. The amulet flared brighter than ever. The darkness flinched, the shadows shrinking away from her, as if she were a flame, awakening them. The very ground beneath her quaked as tendrils of despair entwined, colliding with the rippling light emanating from her heart. "I will not turn into a shadow," she cried. "I will shine." With that courageous thought, the light erupted, strangling the darkness completely. A blinding flash consumed everything. And then there was silence. Mara opened her eyes, blinking against a wash of blaring light. The pit was gone. She found herself back in the garage, in her realm. Familiar sounds of laughter and conversation filled the air, the scent of oil wafting through the space. Her coworkers, initially frozen in shock, erupted with cheers as they witnessed the glowing amulet around her neck. "Mara," Carlo rushed forward, her face filled with disbelief and admiration. "What happened?" Mara blinked, trying to refocus as the air quivered with a renewed sense of joy. The weight of the battle lingered in her heart, but she felt lighter, transparent as she breathed, a warrior clad in glow. "I fought with the shadows, but I didn't just defeat them. I embraced them." A murmur of awe rippled through the shop. Her fellow mechanics, who had once laughed with contempt, now regarded her with a newfound respect. Rick swallowed hard, a look of pure astonishment on his face. "You really did it? You actually faced them?" "Yes," Mara said, her voice filled with conviction. "And we can all face our shadows, together." With a surge of joy, her coworkers began to rally around her. The tension that had once filled the garage evaporated, replaced by gratitude and a deep sense of camaraderie. As the celebration swirled around her, Mara felt the weight of the golden bracelet against her heart. This was her recognition, a sacred reminder of something she fought for fiercely and claimed with pride. "Let us get to work then," she said, laughter bubbling up, a wave of solidarity igniting in the room. "We've got machines to fix." The noise rang in her ears, not as a mockery, but as music, a harmony of overcoming doubts. For Mara, this wasn't just a victory. It marked the rebirth of her spirit. She turned toward the open garage door, the sun illuminating the vast world outside. There were challenges still ahead, no doubt about that. But she was ready. The journey had just begun. The story of her fight against the shadows would live on, resonating louder than any laughter that sought to belittle her. As the garage buzzed with energy, Mara knew one thing for sure. She would never allow the darkness to consume what was rightfully hers. And together, they would light the way. That if you enjoyed this story, this is the moment to show your support. Subscribe immediately so you don't miss out on the next exclusive tales waiting for you. Smash that like button now to help feed the algorithm and flood the comments section with your reactions, insights, and theories about the journey you just witnessed. And let us not wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to know about Mara's incredible triumph. The power of community can accomplish anything.